Cases where people reappeared years after going missing. Imagine a loved one vanishing without a trace, no clues, no leads, no explanation. Then, years later, against all odds, they suddenly reappear. Where have they been? What happened to them? Were they lost, taken, or did they disappear willingly? Throughout history, there have been bizarre cases of people who went missing only to return years, or even decades, later, often with disturbing or mysterious stories. Some have no memory of where they've been, while others tell tales so chilling they sound like something straight out of a horror movie. Join us as we uncover some of the strangest cases of missing persons who reappeared years later, leaving behind more questions than answers. 1. The reappearance of Stephen Kabatsky, the man who vanished for 15 months. In 1978, Stephen Kabatsky, a 23-year-old college student in Michigan, went missing while skiing near Lake Michigan. His footprints led to the frozen lake, but no other traces were found. The search for him ended in frustration, with authorities suspecting he had drowned beneath the ice. Then, 15 months later, Kabatsky suddenly reappeared, 700 miles away in Massachusetts. He had no memory of what had happened to him. Even stranger, he was wearing unfamiliar clothes and carrying a bag filled with strange maps. When asked where he had been, he simply said he didn't know. He had no recollection of the time that had passed. Was he kidnapped? Did he suffer amnesia? Or was something far more bizarre at play? To this day, Stephen Kabatsky's case remains one of the most mysterious disappearances and reappearances in history. 2. The disappearance of Edgar Lachalip, a man who forgot his own identity. In 1986, a 21-year-old Canadian man named Edgar Lachalip vanished from his home in Ontario. Edgar had a developmental disability and the mental capacity of a 12-year-old, making his sudden disappearance all the more distressing for his family. For nearly 30 years, his case remained unsolved. His family feared the worst. Then, in 2016, something astonishing happened. A man in St. Catharines, Ontario, began having strange flashes of memory. He visited a therapist and slowly started piecing together fragments of his past. DNA testing confirmed the unthinkable. This man was Edgar Lachalip. Lachalip had suffered a head injury shortly after disappearing, which caused him to lose his memory and forget who he was. He had been living under a different identity for nearly 3 decades, unaware of his true past. This case proves that sometimes the biggest mysteries hide within our own minds. 3. The curious case of Jean Pilot, the woman who reappeared decades later. In 1946, a French woman named Jean Pilot disappeared without a trace. She was a young housewife in a quiet town, and her sudden vanishing made no sense. There were no signs of foul play, no suspicious activity. She was simply gone. Years passed, and her family gave up hope. Decades later, in the 1980s, an elderly woman checked into a hospital in Paris. She had no identification, no memory of her past, and no knowledge of who she was. Hospital staff eventually connected the dots and discovered that this woman was Jean Pilot. But how had she survived all those years? Where had she been? Pilot could not explain her missing decades. Some believe she may have suffered a psychological breakdown, while others suspect she was taken and later released. To this day, her case remains a haunting mystery. For the vanishing of Bruno Manser, the activist who lived among tribes. Bruno Manser, a Swiss environmental activist, disappeared in 2000 while fighting against deforestation in the rainforests of Borneo. He had been living among the Penan tribe, an indigenous people fighting to protect their land from illegal logging. For years, authorities searched for Manser, believing he may have been murdered by logging companies who wanted him silenced. But then rumors started to emerge, stories of a mysterious white man seen living deep within the jungle. Some believe Manser chose to disappear, adopting the ways of the Penan people and cutting off contact with the outside world. Though no official confirmation has ever been made, some claim he is still alive today, hidden in the remote wilderness of Borneo. Did he go missing willingly? Or was he forced into hiding? The mystery remains unsolved. 5. The chilling story of Carlos Sanchez, a case of forced disappearance. In 1977, Carlos Sanchez, a young activist in Argentina, was taken from his home by military forces during the country's brutal dictatorship. He was one of thousands of people who vanished without explanation, victims of what became known as forced disappearances. For decades, his family believed he had been killed. But in 2010, more than 30 years later, a man in Spain claimed to be Carlos Sanchez. DNA testing confirmed it. He was the missing activist. Sanchez revealed that after being kidnapped, he was taken to a secret prison and subjected to experiments, possibly mind control or psychological torture. He had no memory of how he ended up in Spain, only that he had somehow escaped his captors. His case raises dark and disturbing questions about the true nature of forced disappearances, and how many more missing people could still be alive, unaware of their past. Final thoughts: theories behind mysterious reappearances. Cases of people who have vanished and reappeared defy logic. Some claim amnesia, while others suggest brainwashing, kidnappings, or even government experiments. A few cases involve survivors who were simply living under new identities, while others suggest supernatural explanations. Could these missing persons have been taken against their will? Did they escape secret programs? Or did they choose to disappear, only to return years later for unknown reasons? One thing is certain: not all disappearances end in tragedy. Sometimes, against all odds, the missing come back. But what truly happened during their lost years may remain a mystery forever. If you found this video fascinating, subscribe for more real-life mysteries, unexplained cases, and dark truths hidden from the public.